Hello and welcome back to this course on F&B. So we have discussed so far the F&B revenue and expenses. What are the operating matrices reports that we are using in the F&B to understand the revenue and profitability. Now let us look at how the revenue and expenses are played out in the profit and loss statement. How do we read the profit and loss statement? What are the ways where we can analyze the revenue and expenses in order to understand the overall business um, of the restaurant or of the hotel F&B department, so that we can make a clearer understanding how we can improve the profitability. So in as we have seen in the past, the F&B revenue is divided into food revenue, beverage revenue, other income and allowances. In the usually is by venue, so food revenue is by venue, banquet, and so there is a detail in the food revenue as well. It's by outlet, how much is in room dining, how much is in the banquet, how much is in the. If we have so much details in the profit and loss statement, profit and loss statement looks super big, right? So you will not be able to get a bird eye view of the profit and loss statement. So in that case, usually we keep those reports separately, as you have already the operating matrices. So you will be able to get all those details but in a separate annexure. So food revenue, by venue, by department, by average check, by the total number of guests coming into the restaurant, and also the capture ratio. So the F&B revenue, you will be able to analyze it from there in detail. But before we go into the detail, we need to look at what is the overall picture. So the overall picture is the main is four lines: food revenue, beverage revenue, other income and allowances. So here we are going to look at what is the ratio compared to the into food revenue to the total revenue, which is here 43%. So this percentage is calculated by food revenue divided by the total revenue. Similar way, beverage revenue divided by the total revenue, other income divided by total revenue. So what we are going to look at there, we are going to look at the proportion of the food revenue and beverage revenue. Is it same or is it changing? If changing, is it changing for a good? Is beverage revenue going to increase? Is the other income is increasing as a percentage, or is always primarily dependent on the food? So this will help us to really understand, are we too much dependent on the food, or we are able to upsell any beverages, or we are able to make any other income coming from the audiovisual or the cover charges or the surcharge or anything else like that. Are we giving too many allowances? Then we can look at the percentage of the allowances to total revenue and compare with the budget and compare with the previous years. So that is so once we have an overall understanding, and if let's say the food revenue is dropping, you can go back to the operate supplementary reports that are available by venue, by banquet, in-room dining, and then that further you can drill down into the number of guests and the average spending. If let's say is a number of guests is a problem, then you can further drill down into in-house report and capture outside guest report that we used to discuss in our previous videos. So basically you are going granular, going from the top to one step down, one step down, one step down in granular details. Even if you are, let's say you are going to say, okay, it's mostly the outside guest or the in-house guest is a problem, you may want to see what are the nationalities, where they are coming from, what is the overall room segmentation of the room department, what kind of guests are coming into the hotel, are they spending with us or they are not spending with us. You may want to see the nationality of the guests which are coming. Is there any change in the nationality of the guest coming to the hotel? What is the nationality that has been coming to the F&B operations, and now are they coming or not coming? So you will be able to drill down in more details. We have covered this in more details in our other course on F&B. You may look at that. But for this usually course, this is how we read the profit and loss statement and go into granular details. Then after you have understood the revenue department, revenue ratio, now you're going to look at the cost. The cost is as we have seen is divided into cost of food sale, cost of beverage sale, which is you because it's a variable cost. You may want to look at in terms of percentages to food revenue, percentages to the beverage revenue. This percentage is not to the total revenue. This percentage is to the relevant revenue of the item. So cost of food sale is compared with the cost of food revenue, cost of beverages to beverage revenue, and audio visual and miscellaneous is to the other income. Then you will say the total cost of sale, which is to total revenue, and then you will get the profitability here. So this profitability, gross profit, is quite important because it gave us the effectiveness of our pricing and volume business. Is it our gross profit percentage is increasing or decreasing? The higher the, if you sell at a very low price and you're not able to get a lot of customers, you will your amount will be lower, the gross profit amount will be lower, and also the percentage will be lower. In some cases it may happen that percentage is low but the total amount is higher, which is perfectly fine. But in that case, you also need to look at what is the amount on the net profit. It means how does it impact the other expenses? More guests will definitely cost more in terms of other expenses, especially on the labor. So is it labor cost same or change? What is the percentage to the revenue? Just like other departments, uh, room labor cost has also more details, which we have already discussed in our previous videos. But instead of putting all the details into the P&L and making it super long, we have put them into the separate line, separate annexure, where we are going to discuss the labor cost by management, preparation, stewarding, service, miscellaneous, and also against these other line items where we are comparing the recovered salary, miscellaneous. So format is can be changed. The details you need to follow the usually here is not exactly the same, is more and how we follow in our hotel. So every hotel can have different format of following the labor cost, but you may want to follow the usually exactly as a gross profit. But when you are comparing the individual profit and loss statement for each and every outlet, in that case, the revenue will be only for that particular outlet. You will not get more details than this, right? But you may still compare the number of guests, the average check, which you will find in our profit and loss statement as well. So the key information is there in one page. So that's the idea. The you want to put maximum information in one page so that the user, the reader, does not have to go to the multiple reports. Then once you have understood the labor cost, which is it contract labor, is it more on the fixed labor, what is more, is it preparation, is it service, or is it stewarding, what is the variance compared to the budget and compared to the last year. So you may want to go into the general ledger and find out what type of expenses are higher. Is it a salary increase or number of people increase? Then you will look at the other expenses, which is banquet expense, chinaware, glassware, silverware. Some of these expenses are fixed and some of these are related to the number of guests served in the hotel. And also it depends on how the business has been generated, how the expense has been committed. For example, banquet expenses usually will depend only on the revenue, because if you don't have function, you don't have to spend anything. So banquet expenses will highly depend on the functions. It may increase or decrease the profitability of the hotel, of the restaurant. Chinaware usually is a fixed ad hoc expense. It depends on the breakages. If you have more breakages, you will have more expense. But primarily, it depends on the business as well, because if you don't have business, there is no breakage. If you have more business, there will be more mistakes, more breakages will happen. So it depends on the business level. But certain properties, they put chinaware and charge the and amortize into the expenses on an equal basis, because you are using the chinaware every time. It may not have a breakage, but the usage is there, right? So certain properties follow the amortization method, where they buy the chinaware at one time and amortize in maybe 2 year, 3 year, 5 years. It's that way. Then you have cleaning supplies, depending on how the cleaning contract has been given. Is if they are doing in-house, then mostly it will be higher in the labor cost plus the certain cleaning. But it does not depend on how many guests you are, because primarily is for public area, the restaurant need to be clean no matter how much. But the expenses will be slightly higher when there is a high turnover, means the restaurant is super busy, you need more often cleaning. But if the restaurant is not super busy, you may need less cleaning, but there will be still be required. So it means that cleaning supplies is more of a semi-fixed expense, right? So it's not 100% fixed, but it's semi-fixed. It's variable to a very small extent. So when you are comparing the expenses with the budget and last year, you may have to keep that in your mind, that this is not a 100% variable expense. It's not also a 100% fixed expense. It's a semi-variable. So it depends on the business level, but not to a large extent. Then you have cluster services, which is more on the similar nature. Commissions, complementary services is usually depend on the business. Contract services are usually fixed. Corporate services, corporate office reimbursable is usually not in the restaurant contract or no hotel control or hotel control. They are more charged from the corporate office. So mostly you may not want to compare it against the revenue. Then you have decorations, which is mostly on the business level. Dishwashing supplies, business level. So you may want to compare the cost with per guest. How much per guest we are spending on dishwashing, how much per guest we are spending on decorations. So that way you will be able to see, is it really in line with the business, or we should be able to control the expenses. Then you have dues and subscription, which are mostly fixed. Entertainment, which is usually depend on the business. Equipment rental usually is fixed. Flatware, glassware is usually ad hoc, depend on the breakages, or it following the accounting policy similar to Chinaware. So it depends on what are the accounting policy of the company. You can follow the way to analyze the expenses. Depend ice kitchen fuel, it depends on the business level. If the business is very good, then you will have a more spending. If business is not good, you will not be spending too much. So then you can see how much is per cover that you are spending or per guest you are spending. Then you have smallware, kitchenware is usually kind of variable expense. Laundry fixed, licenses are fixed, linens are fixed, management fee is usually a percentage, menu and beverage are usually ad hoc. It depends on when you are changing, how often you are changing, and are they damaged and you are reprinting them. So they are not relevant as per guest expense. Then you have music entertainment, usually is a fixed expense. Operating supplies, paper plastics are usually depend on the business, so they are more on variable expense. So you can compare per guest expense there. Then you have postage, printing and stationery, usually depends on the business. Reservations, royalty fee depends on the business. So you can compare per guest, per cover. Are you spending more or less compared to the previous year and budgets? And then you can compare. If you should be able to control, or you should have been able to control, how the managers are effective in controlling their expenses. Travel and uniform usually are fixed expense. Utensils are ad hoc, depends on the breakages and the needs of the restaurant. Not really based on if you have 10 guests extra to serve, you will need more utensils. No, it's not that way, right? So it's more on ad hoc expense. So when you are looking at the profit and loss statement and the line of expenses, you need to understand what are the drivers of those expenses, or the spending. Is it the business? Are they fixed? Are they ad hoc? Right? Then only you will be able to understand the impact of these expenses onto the profit and loss statement. If they are ad hoc, then you need to see, justify, was it really necessary at this point of time, or it could have been delayed, or it could have been managed in another way. So this is how you usually analyze the profit and loss statement in general. Then you have a per cover expense as well. So usually you will say, okay, there is another attachment, and then you will say F&B per available, not per occupied room, but more on per guest. how much is per guest you are spending. So food revenue per guest, F&B revenue per guest, other expenses also per guest. Certain expenses like as we have already discussed, cost of sales, they are not really relevant per guest. So you may, but to give a completeness, you need to include them, but to analyze them, you need to be clear how you are going to read the profit and loss statement. Not everything is per guest. Certain things are related to revenue, certain things are fixed, so they are also not relevant. Even if you are looking at per guest expenses, they may be higher or lower depending on how much the business, but certain expenses will remain fixed, right? So this is how you will overall analyze the profit and loss statement for F&B department. I hope you liked the course. Thank you very much.